Hi, Amy Weir, Round Rock ISD Board Secretary, and I'm back again just to do a little recap. We had two important meetings happen on Monday, August 21st. We had a public hearing and then we had a called board meeting, both of them regarding our voter-approved tax rate election and setting of our tax rate. Both of them are on Round Rock ISD's website. The public hearing actually is under the regular meeting tab, and then the called meeting is under the called meeting tab. And I think it's important to understand there was a lot of distraction, a lot of misinformation that happened during these two. And while there was a lot of positives that came out of it about our district, first thing I want to talk about is some of the misinformation and hopefully help people understand what was going on during the meeting. So initially in the public hearing, Mr. Covington is talking about the different steps, some great slides. I'll try to attach them here where you can see how the tax rate is actually going down, how actually most people's actual taxes will go down, even if this voter approved tax rate election passes. VATER, I'm gonna say VATER for short. So if you hear that, that's what it stands for. At about the 18.5-minute mark, Mr. Covington is talking about the steps, and he says one of the things that the district is doing is an efficiency audit. It is required by law in normal circumstances, but if you've had a declaration declared disaster, you don't have to do it. So technically, we don't have to do it. Our administration, in an attempt to be completely transparent, is of course doing an efficiency audit as prescribed in statute. 3 minutes after Mr. Covington gives this information, about almost the 21.5-minute mark, Trustee Bone then claims that the board received information that the district was not doing the audit. Credit to Mr. Covington for his infinite patience. He then has to about 3 times explain in different wording that yes, the district is doing an efficiency audit as prescribed by law, and that it will be available to the board at the October meeting, though they are hoping it will be done by the end of September. So prior to the November 7th election, where the voter approved tax rate election will actually happen. We have other comments at about the 24-minute mark. Trustee Bone again goes back to the efficiency audit and her desire to have an efficiency audit. I'm not sure why, but it seemed like she was not quite understanding. Somehow, as she talks about the 4th or 5th time she mentions her desire for an efficiency audit, she starts to twist her argument.
We're hijacking and holding hostage teacher pay raises. I mean, why don't we hold hostage something else, that's $12 million? You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. I think most of us have heard that. That's what we teach our kids. We're handed this money from the state. This is what we get.
She starts saying things like the administration is holding teacher pay raises hostage. She starts saying you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. She starts an incredibly twisted narrative that was difficult to follow while we were in the meeting. If you rewatch it, it's difficult to follow. After about 2.5 minutes of her word salad on hostage taking, she then again comes back for yet another request for the efficiency audit, which, as had been stated numerous times, is in the works. She also, during this time, is having a hard time understanding the budget that we passed in June, despite having been on the board for almost 3 years. With no data, with no facts, not even anecdotal data, starts throwing out things like, well, we have money for shiny new things. We have 100K here, 100K there. She just admonished Mr. Covington a little bit earlier about not having data and hard facts and how she couldn't make any judgments without them.
Our job is to make good choices through data, and just to give anecdotal reasoning, it's not good enough for me personally up here making these type of decisions. So I appreciate that we're doing an efficiency audit. I think it's coming too late.
At about the 31-minute mark, she even throws out that we had a new HR building.
Hey, let's have a new HR building. $3 million, no big deal. I would be, hey, let's give it to our teachers, and HR can, I don't know, they can come in here. They can have the boardroom. Let's put in some cubicles.
which wasn't true. We actually renovated the technology center for HR to move in. I believe bond funds were used. So her not understanding the difference between the bond funds and the maintenance operation at this point in her tenure as a trustee is concerning. Also, the boardroom that we use is in Round Rock ISD. Round Rock High School and Round Rock ISD students do use those rooms when it's needed for testing and other things. So obviously we could not put offices in student spaces. We then move to the called board meeting where this conversation actually continues, because we can't vote during the public hearing. So we had to talk about it again in our called meeting. And again, Trustee Bone is choosing new arguments now to be against the Vader. At about the 33-minute mark of the called meeting, she starts to be worried about the budget shortfall of $33 million that we will have without the Vader, without it being approved.
If it fails, then we're going to have a budget shortfall of $33 million. So can you just talk about, Mr. Covington, can you talk about the risk of us doing this? Because like I said, I haven't seen this done. And talk about the risk in terms of long-term and the fund balance also, if you can, please.
Interestingly, it had been my concern during the public hearing that we would have a $33 million budget shortfall should the Vader not pass. And that's without teacher pay raises, we will have that. So we will be using fund balance no matter what. We will have to dip into our savings account. And poor Mr. Covington at this point is having to share his recommendations about fund balance yet again to Trustee Bone. Again, she starts in with no facts and no data, just random numbers. We have $3 million for this, $100,000 for that, back to the holding hostage, and again, talking about the efficiency audit. It was and is frustrating to have just numbers thrown out with no data, with no anything. She says she doesn't want to hold teachers hostage. She doesn't want to strong arm teachers. She's morally opposed. At about the 49-minute mark, she says, why don't we hold hostage a new football stadium?
What we're saying is you're holding the wrong thing hostage for this Vader. I don't know. Do you want a new football stadium? Whatever you want. Hold something else hostage other than the teacher raises.
Now, this is a fictional narrative that no one in the room or watching this probably has any idea what she's talking about. I'm not even sure where that came from. Our 2018 bond was the last bond we had. Obviously, no football stadium was on that. We haven't talked about any other bonds. This came out of thin air. And so how our administration is supposed to reason and explain to someone who clearly doesn't understand the difference between the bond money and our maintenance and operation, much less what was on the bond. And she was a member of the 2018 bond committee. Let's not forget that. And at that point, she's missing her earlier comments from 25 minutes earlier, where she was worried about using fund balance to cover the pay raises. So, the administration and board majority are willing to use fund balance right now, no matter what, to give a somewhat cost of living raise and cover insurance for teachers. We've said that. This Vader is about the additional 3% that we would like to give all staff. Now, I understand that Trustees Bone and Weston don't feel that way, and that is their right. Though I would also like to point out a couple of troubling things about their stance. At the 43-minute mark, Trustee Weston has several items that she feels like we can do.
The board refuses to address right-sizing the staffing levels in our school district to be consistent with the actual student population.
One of them is right-sizing the number of staff. Now, to me, that just means she's looking to fire teachers and staff. That is one of her ideas. Later, at about the 48-minute mark, Trustee Bone is very clear that she and Danielle could find $12 million in the budget to pay for these pay raises without the Vader.
Danielle and I fully believe we could find the 3% today.
Now, only one thing has been mentioned by either of them on the dais at any point as a way to actually find money, and that would be to be firing staff. That is absolutely not anything that this administration has ever recommended. It is not anything that this board is looking to do, or at least the board majority is looking to do. Yes, there have been some positions that were eliminated due to the fact that they were put onto temporary ESSER funds, and we could not afford to bring them back into the general budget. But there is no plan to do any of the things that Trustees Bone and Weston are recommending. So just to sum up, and hopefully I'll come back with a little bit more about the Vader and some positive things, but I have full faith in Mr. Covington and his staff that they are doing a phenomenal job with the finances of Round Rock ISD. We have A ratings from every organization, AAA ratings from the bond organizations, A ratings from those that look at our budget. We will have an efficiency audit that comes out prior to the November 7th election. But most importantly, unlike Trustee Bone, I don't feel like this is something that the trustees should decide, and I'm very grateful that we will go before the voters. I'm also confident that we have an amazing, intelligent community that can look at all the facts and not be distracted by misinformation and 2, 3, 4 minute, very hard to follow stream of consciousness with fictional narratives that are going on the dais. I feel like our amazing community is going to support our teachers and our staff and pass this Vader on November 7th in order to support them and give them at least a little of what they deserve. Thank you again, Amy Weir, Board Secretary, Round Rock ISD.